Hillary Clinton is setting up her vagina for the next 4 years. Uh, um, I meant to say vagina defense. Sorry. I wonder if after the election and his crushing defeat, Donald Trump is going to go to Fulton, Missouri, and since so many of his supporters seem to consider him the 21st century Winston Churchill, he will give the Meet Curtains speech. It'll probably be the first special on the Trump News Network. Anyway, my gal Susan Wright, Red State, and when I say my gal, I mean that is a gesture of immense respect and simpatico-ness regarding ideology, philosophy, and never Trumpism. Now, I distinctly remember watching then Democrat nominee Barack Obama speak before besting John McCain in the 2008 elections before an adoring crowd. Kind of like Trump's crowds, except their candidate isn't going to win. And he made what would be his go-to defense for the entirety of his presidency. To paraphrase, some will look at me and say I don't look like other candidates. Some will say my name is different. Now let's not lose the implication here. We're all racists, obviously, and if any objection to Barack Obama was ever voiced, from that moment forward it had nothing to do with his foul and destructive policies. It was racism and unbridled xenophobia. It's not like, again, you didn't have to be clairvoyant in order to predict this. I was talking about this right around the same time as he was, back in the 2008 Democrat primaries, I was saying this. Yeah, the slightest bit of disagreement, anything less than unadulterated of Barack Obama would be called racism. It was really easy to foresee. Now, that bit of identity politics acted simultaneously as a shield and a battering ram to allow a Marxist devotee to not only win the White House, but cram through some of the most divisive and damaging policies modern America has ever endured. Barack Obama is a lazy, arrogant attack on the nation, and we have suffered immensely for it. Well, now enter the next phase of identity politics over sound governance. This quote is from the Politico. Hillary Ronin Clinton on Friday said her presidency will be more difficult both because of her role as the first woman to hold the office and because of the viciousness of her race with Donald Trump. Contrived viciousness. This whole general election is just the biggest, most egregious example of phony baloney, plastic banana, good time rock and roll, kabuki theater there has ever been. It's all a work, folks. You Trumplicans want to talk about, the election's rigged, everything's fixed. Nah, well, maybe so, but not in the way you think. Because your guy is in on it. I know that, I got to work on my Hillary impression. I know this is the hardest job in the world, Mrs. Clinton told Anjali Queen Bee of WBTP 95.7 FM, The Beat, in Tampa, Florida. I think being the first woman to do this job will require even greater effort on my part because I want to be the president for everybody. Sorry, I didn't. Let me regain my composure. I really regret how divisive this campaign has been, she added, hitting Republican nominee Donald Trump for hurtful rhetoric. I've got to figure out how we deal with these divides. Close quote. No, Mrs. Clinton, it will not be difficult because you'll be the first woman president, with a capital F, capital W, capital P. It'll be difficult because everything and every position you've ever held was because you used your husband's name and rode his coattails, stood on his shoulders. You've never accomplished anything on your own merits, and as you proved in your stint as Commissar of State, once in position, you are equal parts incompetent and corrupt. Hillary Clinton will have gotten to the White House on her back. In other words, now, this is not a knock on her gender. This is a total indictment of or against her lack of moral character. A Hillary Clinton presidency will be so rife with scandal and outrage, no woman will ever be able to run for any sort of high office again without being immediately labeled unfit. Oh, I don't know about that part. There are plenty of perfectly competent, capable women who are perfectly capable and competent of seeking and serving honorably and capably in high office. So I don't know if I'd go that far. Hillary Clinton is not going to spoil. I mean, is there anybody out there who is making the argument? Well, they're probably not making the argument because they're afraid of being called racist. But is there anybody out there making the argument that, well, no black person will ever be elected or even be considered for the presidency again because Barack Obama has so completely crapped the bed on the concept? I don't. Again, maybe it's because people don't want to be called racist, but I wouldn't agree with that. I'm sure there are plenty of African Americans who are capable and competent to seek and serve in high office. I mean, Ben Carson, once he got a spine and went through detox from his Trumpification and actually ran for office at a lower office to gain some experience and build a background and build a resume. You see where I'm going. How about Tim Scott, United States Senator from South Carolina? Another good example. Alan Keyes back in the day. You know, I mean, this is not difficult. Clarence Thomas. I could go on. So I don't believe for 1 minute that Hillary Clinton is going to just totally pee in the punch bowl on the idea of any future woman president. I think Susan is exaggerating a bit there. But Mrs. Clinton is counting on her vagina to give her the same immunity as Obama's skin color, which, by the way, I don't think is going to be nearly as successful. Her gender, her 2 X chromosomes are not going to be the impregnable shield and flaming sword that Barack Obama's mulatto status gave him. She'll be much more dependent upon La Clinton Nostra, which means her husband. But she thinks that she can count on her vagina to serve that same purpose. In a nation that has become hypersensitive to offending anyone except the right people for any given reason. What a blow to women's equality to have a woman president who has no accomplishments to truly call her own. I could make no, I'm just not going to go there. Mrs. Clinton also used the interview to call on African American listeners to vote, touting her work with Barack Obama and praising the Black Lives Matter movement, with whom she got in a shouting match. Oh, what was it? About a year ago, when Black Lives Matter crashed one of her rallies, and she met with them away from the press. The press were not allowed in. The look on her face, I mean, it was about one step below flames shooting out of her eyes and consuming them where they stood. I think they played a very constructive role in helping us all to face up to the work that we need to do to confront systemic racism in America, Mrs. Clinton said. Oh, look, everybody, it's a Pander Bear! Pander Express. Yeah, my daughter took me to Panda Express for my birthday recently, and that was cool. My stomach is still purring in contentment over a week later. Now, this statement was pretty much the equivalent of saying, some of my best friends are Negroes. This is the identity politics that have put a boot across the throat of our nation. And in this context, Trump is simply white identity politics, forcing us to, which is why the alt-right has risen from its moldy grave, forcing us to endure years of bad policy, economic depression, and a deadening of social mores. It's more like a genocide of social mores. And sadly, Mrs. Clinton and the Democrats will have 4 more years to wreak havoc on the nation, thanks to Trump supporters. Republicans failed to offer any better option to counter this threat, so here we are. Now, if there is any hope in all of this, we can cling to the anticipation of vagina politics failing to protect Mrs. Clinton, and that she will be swiftly removed from her position and rushed off to a federal trial. That's the way it works. You can't just throw her in jail. I mean, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, she deserves a fair trial, and we all know she's never going to go to federal prison or any other prison, not even a club fed. So I wouldn't get your hopes up for that. You know, all of you out there who have your Hillary for prison memes and Facebook profile pictures and so forth, I sympathize, but it's never going to happen. See, the sooner you can come to grips with unpleasant realities like that, the less susceptible you're going to be to left-wing nut New York liberal con men like Donald Trump. Control your anger, in other words. Now, we can pray that after a decade of Democrats holding the nation hostage, the coming revolt will be so strong that it ushers in a new era of principled conservatism that would make Goldwater, Reagan, and Buckley beam with pride. We can pray for it, but I wouldn't count on it if I were you. We can pray for these things, we can hope for these things, however forlornly. But let's also work to make sure that we never make the same grave mistakes that were made in this cycle. And if you think that that is ever going to see the light of day or ever become a reality, stand on your head.